Hey, what is happening? Chris Martinez here, host of Operation Agency Freedom, the best podcast in the universe. I feel like I'm always excited, but yes, I am always excited. And this one's really, really important because I was doing a webinar a couple weeks ago and I spoke about this specific topic. And everybody that was on the call loved it, very, very engaged in the webinar and the lessons that I was teaching. So ultimately, what I'm going to share with you today, you can apply this anytime your agency is experiencing a plateau. So if you feel like you're just stuck, right? Apply these 4 things that you must focus on to overcome that plateau. And then when you hit the next plateau, you're going to implement these 4 things over and over and over again. It's the solution. Every time you reach a plateau, you need to focus on these 4 things every single time. Obviously, if you're experiencing a plateau or you've experienced a plateau in the past, you want to have a framework to get through that. Take lots of notes, listen to everything that I talk about. Go to the website, by the way, because if I've referenced anything in the call, the notes will be there in the show notes. And then, of course, subscribe. It's great for me. It's great for you. Helps me out. I'll buy you tacos if you subscribe to the podcast. So let's head over to the show. Okie dokie. Welcome back. So I was hosting a webinar a couple weeks ago. It might have been 3 weeks ago. I rolled out this new 4-step framework for basically getting through plateaus. And it was so impactful. I got such a great response from the audience. And really, I didn't even know what I had on my hands until a friend of mine, Danny, got to give a shout out to Danny Barrera. He kind of said, hey, this is the way that you can apply this framework that you've developed. Because ultimately, you slide this in every time you have a plateau. And, he's grown his agency multiple millions of dollars a year. He's like, every time you hit a plateau, you just slide this framework in. So I'm going to if you're listening, you won't be able to see my hand gestures, but basically when you're scaling your agency, we all kind of imagine the dream scenario where we start down here at the bottom and then every month incrementally we grow and grow and grow, right? Kind of like on a straight line. Well, we know that's not the case, right? So typically what happens is you'll grow and grow and grow, and then you'll kind of flatline. Or maybe you'll drop down a little bit and then you'll flatline and then you maybe go up a little bit and then you'll flatline and then you'll grow and then you'll maybe drop or maybe you grow a little bit and then you flatline, right? It's never this straight line. So ultimately, what we have discovered are that when you hit that plateau, you really just need to rely on 4 things. Okay. So of course, I'm going to give you the 4 things. So the first pillar is people. You need team members, right? Maybe you need more team members. Maybe you need better team members. Maybe you yourself need to become a better team member, right? Maybe you need to bring in more leadership team. But ultimately, that's the first thing is you got to look at the team that you have and figure out, do we need more or who do we need more of? What are the skill sets that we're deficient in that's going to help us solve these problems? Part 1. The second thing that you got to look at is operations and specifically the efficiency of your operations, your SOPs. Right? Do we need to reinvent our SOPs? Do we need to create new SOPs? Are we getting the most out of the people that we have? Are we putting them in a position where they can do the amazing work that we know that they're capable of? Or are they getting sidetracked? So that's part 2, processes. Part 1, people. Part 2, processes. The third part, training. Is everybody trained on how they are going to help grow the agency? And this absolutely includes you, the owner. Do you have the skill sets to get the business through that next hurdle? So do you know how to run the numbers? Do you know how to look at your profit and loss? Do you have a pro forma in place? Do you have budgets? Do you have sales targets? Or are you just kind of winging it every month? Like if you are going to grow the agency, you yourself typically have to transform yourself. The agency is a reflection of you. Do you need to get more disciplined? Do you need to hold yourself to a higher standard? And then that cascades down from there. Now, when it comes to team members, do you have things like the job descriptions? Do they know the objectives that they need to hit to help grow the agency? Does everybody have goals, especially your leadership team? Do they have a churn goal? Do they have a turnaround time goal or completion goals for all the projects? Do you know your profit margins, your gross margin, your net income? You need all of those things. And is everybody trained on how to get that information? That's the third phase, third pillar, I should say. And the fourth thing is the financial plan, right? Do you have the actual plan in place that gives you all those things that I just mentioned, the budgets, the sales targets? Do you actually have that documented? We use a pro forma. We teach you how to do the pro forma. Without that financial roadmap or the right financial model, you'll never hit those objectives that you set out. So that's really all it comes down to is people, processes, training, and profitability. If you're hitting a plateau, you need to lean into those four things and figure it out. And of course, sales, right? We all know that you need sales. And I say this all the time, like if you're in an agency and you can deliver results to clients and help them get leads and sales themselves, you're going to have no shortage of customers. If you can't do that, then you're going to struggle always. So yes, you have to have sales, but ultimately what happens when you reach a plateau is not that you're having a big issue getting new customers. It's that you're having an issue fulfilling projects and keeping customers. That's typically what we see for an agency that's growing and that really has the potential to scale and get to multiple seven figures, maybe eight figures. It's like a leaky bucket, essentially. So you have this bucket, right? And you're pouring water in the top. And then at the bottom, you have all these holes in the bucket and all this water is leaking out. Well, what's leaking out truly is your freedom and your sanity. So instead of just trying to pour more water into the top of the bucket, which is what most of us dive into, because we're really good at sales or it comes more naturally, we need to focus on fixing the freaking holes in the bucket, right? That's the logical thing to do. And that's where the four pillars comes into play. People, process, training, profitability. So if you're looking to go from 0 to 500K and you get to 300K and you hit a plateau, it happens all the time. It typically comes down to people. Do you have the right people? Processes. Are we putting those people in a position where they can be successful and they can do the amazing things that we hired them to do? Training. Does everybody on the team, including myself, have the skills and the training to grow the agency to that next level? And the profit. Do we have the right financial plan and the right business model so that we could actually make money? You fix those things, boom, 500K. Now, what's the next benchmark? $1 million. Great. We go from $500,000 and now guess what? We're plateauing at 750, 800. Some of you are listening to this and you're nodding your heads and you're like, yep, this sounds like me. And guess what we have to do again? Go back to the four pillars. People. Do we have the right people? Processes. Do we have the right processes? Do we need to invent processes so that we can get the most out of the people that we have and the people that we need to bring on? Training. Is everybody trained? Does everybody know what they need to do to get us through this next evolution of the business? I guarantee there's going to be some new skill sets involved. I guarantee that you, the owner, are going to have to learn a little bit more about things like leadership and looking at the numbers and aligning your pricing. And then finally, that financial plan, that profitability side of it. That's the fourth pillar is profit. Do we have the right business model? Do we have all of our budgets? Because this is what happens a lot of the times, right? When you're growing your business, you lose track of what you should be spending on certain areas like production labor. So you end up getting that revenue to 70 grand, but guess what? Your gross margin is now crap. It went from 35% to 55%. Now you're having a cash crisis, or you've grown the revenue and you can't give yourself a raise or a bonus, or you can't afford those people that you need to get you to that next level, right? So you need to look at the numbers. You need to make sure that you have the right plan, financial plan, the right budgets, the right salaries, everything, the right sales goals, the right pricing. Without the right pricing, you're never going to be able to have the money that you need to invest to continue to grow the business. So you need that fourth pillar. You fix that, get to $1 million. Awesome. Then you go from $1 million to $2 million. Boom. It happens very fast. $1 million to $2 million happens fast. You get to $2 million. You want to get to 4 or 5. You hit that plateau. Guess what we got to look at again? Slide it on in. People, processes, training, profit. Do we have the right people? Do we have the right processes so people can do the amazing work we need them to do? Is everybody trained? Am I trained? Like seriously, like ask yourself, because maybe you're like me and internally you're like, man, I have the capacity to run $100 million agency, $1 billion business. Maybe you feel inside that you have that potential, but then you also need to look yourself in the mirror and say, do I have the skills that is required of a $10 million agency or $100 million agency or $1 billion business? I do not have the skills yet of $1 billion CEO. I know that. I don't have the skills of $100 million a year business. I'm getting closer to having the skills of a $10 million CEO, but ultimately you yourself, and this is true of everybody, but you have to be that person before you will have that revenue. I'm going to say that again because it's really, really important. You have to be that CEO. You need to have all those skill sets in place. You need to know how to run the numbers and look at those metrics and manage people and lead. You have to Be that person before you can have the outcome, before you can have the revenue, the profitability, the lifestyle, the freedom. You have to be before you can have. That's true of everybody in your company. And then finally, financial plan, right? So it always comes back to the numbers. Those are the 4 things that you need to do. I have a graphic about this. Hopefully I can put it in the show notes before this episode goes out. It's in design right now. Or you can just join another one of my webinars and I'll show you this graphic that I'm creating. But ultimately, imagine that there is a graph, a line graph. Whenever your agency plateaus, you're going to slide over the 4 things. And once you accomplish those, it's going to transform your business through that plateau. And then you're going to continue to scale. And every time you hit a plateau, you just think about those 4 things: people, process, training, profit. All right, guys, let me know if you have any questions. Have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for listening. Hasta luego.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean so much to me if you could share it with your friends, family, and basically anyone who will find the same value in this episode that you did. And to get the latest from me, then let's definitely connect on social media. You can go to Facebook, facebook.com/Dude Agency, or Instagram @dudeagency.io, or you can check us out on YouTube on our YouTube channel. And then, of course, you can always visit our website at dudeagency.io, where you can see all of our other episodes of Operation Agency Freedom. You can also register for any live trainings that we have going on how to run a highly profitable agency. And of course, you can see how we help digital agencies with the people, the processes, and the education so that they can take on more projects and scale profitably. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.